Innovation is not about shiny objects. It's not about technology. It's about recognizing a problem and having a better or different way to solve it. It may include technology. It may include an algorithm. It may simply include a new process. So you must understand the problem before you develop a solution.
Hello, everyone, and thank you for listening to another episode of our podcast. Today, I'm speaking with Dr. Richard Zane, Chief Innovation Officer at University of Colorado Health. Richard is also Chair of Emergency Medicine at the university and serves as a Professor of Healthcare Administration at the Colorado University Denver Business School. Richard, thanks so much for chatting with me today.
It's my pleasure. Thanks for having me.
Super. So before we dive deeper, could you take a few moments to tell us more about yourself?
So how much would you like to know? You want me to go from like birth to now or hit the highlights?
You hit the highlights for us. That would be great.
All right. So I started off in Europe. I was born in Switzerland, lived in Italy till I was in elementary school, then wound up in Glen Rock, New Jersey, spent my formative years outside of Philadelphia. And then went to college. Almost didn't go to college, but then I went to college at Johns Hopkins where I studied writing seminars and natural sciences. And then I was an elementary school teacher and a football coach. Then went to medical school, did my residency in emergency medicine at Johns Hopkins, followed by a fellowship. And then I was faculty at Harvard Medical School in Brigham and Women's from 1998 until 2012. Was recruited to the University of Colorado to be the first chair of the Department of Emergency Medicine, sort of the founding chair. And then 6.5, 7 years ago, was asked by the healthcare system to be the chief innovation officer. I'm married. My wife, Siobhan, is a pediatric orthopedic surgeon. I've got 3 kids, aged 19, 21, and 27.
Excellent. Wow, that is a very interesting career path. So first of all, what drove you into medicine? You had this career as a football coach and kind of a little bit of a different direction with your undergrad. What drove you into medicine?
Yeah, so my entire career has been really happenstance, to be candid. I am a very opportunistic person. So when great opportunities present themselves, I usually take them. So I almost didn't go to college. I really thought I was going to be a professional motocross racer. Now, think about a 17-year-old or a 16-year-old thinking they're going to be a professional motocross racer. There's probably no reality based in that statement, but that's what a post-pubescent kid thinks. Mm-hmm. And my dad, who I didn't learn he did this for a long time, had this brilliant thought when I came home and said, I don't think I need to go to college because I'm going to race motocross. And he said, well, I think you probably should have a day job. And he got me or helped me get a job in a warehouse, one of the warehouses that he ran. And I worked in the warehouse for 3 days and I came home and I said, Dad, I'm going to college. So that's why I went to college. I went to college because working in a warehouse seemed like not a thing for me at the time. Then at college, I played football. I really went to college to play football. And I found myself loving things that were very specific. So I liked science. I liked writing. I liked playing football. And that's what I studied and that's what I did. And then I found myself finishing college early, not on purpose. I was simply meeting with my advisor and she said, what are you doing next semester? I said, I'm going to college. She said, no, you're not. And I thought she was telling me that something bad had happened and I couldn't go to college anymore. And I just was done. So I really went back and I lived in a fraternity house and my roommate was applying for teaching jobs. And I said, what are you going to do? He said, I'm going to be a teacher. So I was like, huh? So I applied for teaching jobs. And I accepted a job at Princeton Country Day School, which is this bucolic, beautiful private school just outside of the center of Princeton. And I was the lower school science teacher. So ages kindergarten through 5th grade, I was the science teacher. And then I coached high school football and high school lacrosse. And it was amazing.
Wow. First of all, I think there's a great parenting tip there for parents trying to get their kids into university and getting a taste of real life work experience. It's funny what you said. I think many people that have sat in that chair in these interviews have really painted a picture that, their life has been a series of opportunities, right? And very few people that end up in such senior roles, such as you, and such committed pathways of, really dedicated to a cause, started out that way with clarity of thought that this is what I'm going to do for life. And so I'm always curious to find how people ended up. And so from this day school teacher and football coach in Princeton, New Jersey, how did you move into, and sciences, how did you move into healthcare?
So I was at a new teachers conference. I didn't go to college to study teaching. I went to college to study science and writing. So I didn't know how to be a teacher. And all of the new teachers at this school were sent to this conference. And my wife, who's now a pediatric orthopedic surgeon, happened to be a teacher as well. And she was at this new teachers conference. So I met her. We started dating. We started, getting kind of serious. And I'd applied to medical school, law school, and graduate school. And I literally could not decide what I wanted to be. And I decided I probably wasn't going to be a teacher anymore. And that's a whole different story. But I went to medical school to impress my wife. That's really the answer.
That's a noble cause. Yeah, I moved to Canada from Israel for love. So, we make interesting decisions. And then as you started your career as a physician, what drove you into emergency medicine? What was the interest there?
Same thing. The same thing that has defined almost all the decisions I made, which were happenstance. So right now, I think that if one has made a decision to go to medical school, looking at the medical students that come to the University of Colorado or the medical students who are at Harvard, the overwhelming vast majority of them not only made the decision to go to medical school before they went to medical school, but obviously well before they went to medical school, but they made the decision what kind of doctor they were going to be. When I went to medical school, I didn't even know that you had to do a residency after medical school to be a specialist in something. I thought you go to medical school and you get to be a doctor. And then after that, if you want to do something fancy or subspecialized, you spend more time doing that. Didn't really understand the concept. But the first 2 years of medical school were just classroom stuff. And this was a long time ago. And I needed to pay rent. So I was a house painter. So I painted houses and I would show up for the occasional class and exams. And that's really it. And then in the third year, we started doing clinical rotations. And somehow I had envisioned myself becoming a primary care OBGYN. That doesn't exist, by the way. That's not a thing, but that's what I thought I wanted to do. So I did a rotation in medicine, I did a rotation in surgery, and then I did a rotation in OBGYN. And on the third day, I thought, this is not for me. I do not want to be a doctor. And like any good kid with an Italian mom, I called my Italian mom and said, I'm going to business school. And she is 4'11" with a thick Italian accent. By the time I got back to my apartment, she was there with her friend, who is probably 5'1" with a thick Italian accent, and her older son, who was a fourth year medical student, and they essentially had an intervention. So I decided to stay in medical school. So that's why I decided to stay. Picking emergency medicine was a relatively new specialty then. I decided I did not want to do critical care medicine, which is what I was more inclined to do, because at the time, no one could ever envision that an ICU was not an ICU for AIDS patients. And people were doing critical care fellowships and infectious disease fellowships. And it was so much agony. I didn't think I could do that. The physiology was interesting, but the agony was not for me. So then I thought I'd be a trauma surgeon, and I just love the concept of trauma surgery, but I would not be a good surgeon. I can't focus that long in an operating room, and it just wasn't for me. And I was wandering through the emergency department in medical school, and at the time, there wasn't a residency in emergency medicine at that medical school, and there wasn't a department of emergency medicine, and the emergency department was staffed by internists who were between residency and fellowship, and surgeons who didn't want to be surgeons anymore. There's one person there who was an actual emergency physician, and he pulled me aside and said, "What are you going to do?" I said, "I have no idea." He said, "Do emergency medicine." And I said, "I didn't know that was a thing." And he pulled out Annals of Emergency Medicine and went to the back pages and pointed out jobs and proved to me that there were actually jobs in this thing called emergency medicine. I was like, "Hell, I'll do it." So my wife and I did the couples match. She did orthopedics and I did emergency medicine, and I matched at Johns Hopkins, and it was an amazing experience.
I can really see that visual of the picture you painted of the intervention of deciding to double down on med school. I think we've all benefited from that choice that you made many years ago. And so you've got this great career and experience at Hopkins as an EMID doctor, ultimately as a chair. What drove you to then kind of make the leap into the dark side, into administration, take a role as a chief innovation officer?
Well, I've always had a biphasic role, a bipolar role, however you want to describe it. I've always had one foot in the academic side of medicine and one foot into the administrator side of medicine. So I did at Hopkins, I did at Harvard. And when I came to University of Colorado, I came because it was new. I liked the fact that the Department of Emergency Medicine was brand new, had not been a department before. It had been a small, underperforming section in the Department of Surgery, and a new department was created. What happens when you form a new department is that you recruit a chair, you give that chair a kitty, and the kitty is used to build a department, like, seed funding for a startup. So that's exactly what it felt like. It felt very risky, right? Because it wasn't established. The finances were opaque at best because it wasn't a established business unit yet. And it looked like, the world was my oyster. I could sort of build it as I see it. And Colorado's not a horrible place to live. And I was 44 years old at the time, so it's the appropriate time to have a midlife crisis. My wife let me do this. And I say because we had a beautiful life in Boston, like beautiful, best house, great place to live, loved my job. She loved her job. Kids were happy, the whole thing. So we took a leap on my midlife crisis and it worked out. So the innovation thing was, all the same thing. Everything's happenstance for me. So I took over this new department and the healthcare system was just sort of beginning. I had worked in systems before and had roles in systems. So the CEO asked me to do some system work. And I guess I did a good job. No, I know I did a good job. And then I rebuilt this Department of Emergency Medicine and I treated it literally like a venture-backed startup. Right? I took the kitty of money that I was supposed to last 5 to 10 years and I spent it in about 18 months. And the results were good. And where the innovation went was that there were new technologies that I thought would be incredibly useful in the delivery of emergency care. And I just didn't want to pay for them, didn't have the money to pay for them. So I met with the companies and I told them, let's partner. Right? Let's be partners. I'll be a clinical partner. I get your product for free. I get warrants or rev share or something like that. And your product will get better for knowing me and I'll get to use it for free. And I'm very comfortable being, beta customer. So I did that a few times and it started to work. And it was interesting. Companies would come to us because they knew that we would figure out if they were good and if they could survive the scrutiny that my doctors would put on them, and we would continually optimize it, that we would help them scale, right? Seems like a great model. And we were fast, right? We weren't sort of bloating, bureaucratic academic medicine. We made decisions quickly and we iterated day to day or week to week. And I ensconced my department in informaticists and physician epic builders and people who knew technology. So we pair up engineers with clinicians, literally have them sit together and they could understand clinical workflows and we could understand how technologists' brains worked. And then we developed this concept of how we build solutions around pragmatic problem statements that focus on technology. And then we built a capability to make quick decisions and to optimize and help companies scale, which was very attractive at the time to companies because they're burning capital in their Series A. And you have this bloated academic infrastructure where you want them on your client list or you want them on your cap table, but it takes them 7 years to make a decision to do something.
Right.
So unlike, we had to differentiate ourselves from Stanford and Harvard and Cleveland Clinic because we were the University of Colorado. So we differentiated ourselves by sort of going at the cadence of industry.
I think that there's a lot to unpack there, right? There's, first of all, great insights to entrepreneurs, because I think for entrepreneurs, the most valuable currency isn't funding. The most valuable currency is customers, and customers that are willing to roll up their sleeves and help drive better product market fit and how to shape the clinical workflow and really solve true unmet needs. And then I think on the provider side, I think you're exactly right. Academic medical centers are kind of always this shiny object that seriously, as an entrepreneur, I usually try to avoid, because I know it's a 7-year slog. It's a bunch of clinicians that are going to take me in very, very diverse directions with a very slow and kind of disaggregated decision-making process. And it sounds like you've been able to address maybe both of those to find very good middle ground on how to bring, the industry and the providers together to drive innovation.
Yeah, I think we did that in a very small way, right? We did it very toe in the water, very fledgling. We sort of backed into it, got lucky on a couple of things. And then the things that were either unlucky or unskilled, the consequences of failure were nothing, right? It wasn't a big deal to me that an initiative failed, because if you're going to try things, some things are going to fail. So we began to build that sort of culture. And then again, another event happened, which was pure happenstance, which is I got recruited to this really cool job in another part of the country to be the CEO of a healthcare system. I didn't really want to do it. I didn't want to do that job. And I really didn't want to move my family, who just moved, 5 or 6 years before. So the current CEO of UCHealth asked me to create my own adventure, essentially. And my own adventure was to be a chief innovation officer for a system. So now this was for the healthcare system. I reported to the CEO. I don't sit on the board, but I attend all board meetings. I have access to a very robust venture fund and venture capability. So now we could do this on a big scale. And we went big. And it's been really successful. And it's success built on the small learnings in a small department.
And so how do you scale that? I mean, it's not trivial to prioritize innovation in a large healthcare system while ensuring it aligns with the mission of improving patient outcomes, right? Healthcare systems are super operational, thin margin,
Yep.
usually in the red, right? Just focus on like patient care and moving things along. So how can you prioritize innovation and allow it to scale so it doesn't remain in kind of this land of 1,000 pilots, which is often what we see in academic medical centers?
Yeah, we won't even use the word pilot. I won't use it. My teams don't use pilot. We don't do pilots. We do phased deployments. So one was recognizing that I get to work for, I think, the best CEO in healthcare that has ever existed. And she's really clear, doesn't stumble with decisions. It's very easy to know what she and the system want and what they don't want. And some of the marching orders were, if something's working, don't pull it out to try something new. That's pretty easy. But if you think about a lot of places, you get a shiny object, you have a perfectly good shiny object, but because this is new and maybe you can make an investment in it, you're going to rip out the thing that works, put in the thing that you're experimenting on, and all of a sudden people hate you because you've taken away a tool that works. So that was really clear. I'm not allowed to do that. I'm not sure I would have done that, but I was pretty novice at this. So who knows? The next thing was work on things that are broken. So to your point, thin margins, inefficient, et cetera, think about things that are inefficient, that have small margins where you can bring efficiency and bring economies of scale. So don't allow healthcare to be the last bastion of industry where adding technology increases complexity and cost, right? So that's what I did. One of the marching orders was consider where you can add technology to decrease complexity and cost, right? Simple stuff, but that was the marching order. So then we said, okay, what are we going to focus on? What are our guiding principles? How are we going to behave? So some guiding principles are we abhor bureaucracy. So we don't need 17,000 signatures before we're allowed to say no. And we don't need 43 layers before we say yes. So on my innovation decision group, innovation pipeline committee, is myself, the chief financial officer for the system, the chief information officer for the system, the chief strategy officer for the system. So 4 senior executives, all of whom report directly to the CEO and attend all board meetings. So when that group says yes, it's a yes. When that group says no, none of us struggle with a no, right? So bureaucracy. I teamed up with the Anschutz Medical Campus with one of the most brilliant innovation leaders in the country, Kimberly Muller, who is the vice chancellor for innovation and biotechnology. And she was a patent attorney by training, geneticist, ran Yale Ventures, started a number of companies and exited them, and happened to be in Colorado, and the chancellor hired her, luckily. So partnered with her, and really honed our skill. Actually, until we partnered with her, that was one of the big ituses for us to get sort of nimble around this. So got rid of bureaucracy, including things like the IRB. A lot of places, if we're going to do research around technology, whether it's a device or a monitoring system, the IRB can be challenging, not because they exist to thwart innovation, just because it can be a bureaucratic thing to manage. So we were able to set up a system so that we got to the IRB pretty quickly. So we didn't get a different answer because we were innovation. We got the same scrutiny, which is appropriate, but we just got a yes or a no faster. So that was attractive to industry. I had dedicated finance and dedicated legal. So when I'm working with a company, more likely than not, a contract's in your inbox red line than it is in my inbox red line. So companies were struggling to keep up with us, to be honest with you.
Amazing.
Right? So, and then we focused on what we were good at and what was important to us, which is intelligence. Right? So intelligence, like innovation, means everything and nothing. And for us, it's making better decisions in healthcare. So chunking that out in digestible things. What is UCHealth interested in investing in? Things that make better decisions in healthcare, decreases complexity, and improves automaticity. And, that's pretty straightforward. So is it a clinician making better choices around pharmacotherapy at the bedside? Is it an operator making operating rooms more efficient? Is it a executive deploying capital in a better way? Is it a radiologist triaging 17 MRIs or 180 chest x-rays? How are we going to do things better, faster, cheaper, more efficiently? That is our guiding principle. That is what we do. So it's very easy to know what we're good at, what we're not good at, what we don't look at. So I don't look at bazillions of things from all over the spectrum. I look at things that fit into that box.
I think there's some very salient points there. For starters, I love the concept of steering away from pilots and really thinking of them as phased deployments. I think pilots are the kind of thing that fosters a big startup ecosystem with very few scale-ups. And the reality is, if you're not thinking about how you ultimately bring something to scale, to fully commercialize it from the get-go, you're not going to be successful down the road. So I love that thinking. It sounds like also a big focus on rapid decision-making. Yeses are yeses, nos are nos. That's very valuable because startups do tend to move quickly. And they can quickly lose their attention span when they're mired in a long process and trying to navigate a decision-making process at a health system. And it also sounds like you really prioritize talent. And I love what you said, Richard, about, innovation is a skill, right? It's not some God-given talent that we have. It's something that we have to hone and improve on and bring the right people to get better at. And it sounds like there's certainly a secret sauce that you're developing there at UCHealth. That's really helpful. Maybe could we try to bring this formula to life with an example? Like, is there a great technology that you can think of that you're working on now, that you've worked on in the past, that has gone through this, that maybe without this innovation edge and this kind of dedicated approach to sourcing intelligent innovations, the health system wouldn't have adopted or wouldn't have brought into clinical operations?
So the best opportunities are one that come from the front line, from the people doing the work. So we build our innovation around problem statements, very formal problem statements. Now, that being said, that's strategic. Now that we're pretty known out there, we get a lot of companies referred to us. So there are a lot of other systems that will refer us companies that need a system that's used to working with early stage companies. We have venture funds that we work with who will send us companies. So our deal flow is probably 60-40. 60% we go out looking, 40% come to us. But the strategic part of this is the problem statement. So the problem statement was, we have a number of chest x-rays, scans that have incidental findings, and we can't keep track of them. That was the problem statement. It came from our quality leaders. There must be a digital way to do this, an intelligent way to do this, instead of manually across 15 hospitals and thousands of doctors. So we did an environmental scan, and we focused on 3 companies that we thought were able to do this. Usually we'll look at a couple companies that are not in the healthcare space, but are in this type of technology and are looking to get into the healthcare space. Or we look for companies that are small or growing that are in this space and could benefit from a partner like us. partner that goes fast, goes big, and wants you to scale and then helps you scale. So the company that was brought to us was a company called UCHealth, and it was pretty early stage. And then our ideal partners are ones where I'm a customer, co-developer, and participate in value creation. All three of those. So if I'm just going to be a customer, I'm the wrong guy to come to because you need to go to supply chain or you need to go to an operator and they'll hire you and give you a contract if they want to, but that's not me. Co-developer, meaning you have a product, but there's something that you want to develop in a different vertical or adjacent to your product. And then participate in value creation means there's an opportunity for me to make an investment in some way. There's no way for me to make an investment in Roche. We're partnered with them, but we can put together joint ventures. We can put together other things. But this was a Series B company who was raising around. So we were able to do the evaluation, which is first, I and one member of my team meets with the CEO and whoever the CEO wants to bring. So a big red flag to me is if I set up a meeting and the CEO isn't there, I delete the meeting. So the leadership of that company meets with me. I don't get to say yes, but I definitely get to say no. So if the answer is yes, and I just have a gestalt judge of whether the CEO is competent, has done anything before, a gestalt of whether the technology is useful, whether the technology they're showing me actually answers the problem statement that we are looking for. So if they get past me, and probably 1 out of 10 companies will get past me, we then do through a parallel evaluation. We'll do a subject matter expert evaluation. So I'll take 3 subject matter experts and tell them, I want you to look at this company. I don't want you to like it because you think I like it. I want you to like it if what they say turns out to be true, it will make your job easier and better. So that's part 1. Part 2 is a tech deep dive. So in this case, one of our enterprise architects and analysts looked at the company. And then a financial evaluation. We have an advisor to our venture fund who looks at the investable opportunity. And if all 3 of them hit, then we'll do a phased deployment. But the first thing we'll do is really a phase to test whether or not our teams can work together. Is there cultural alignment? Do we work at the same cadence? Are there candid conversations? Are they bullshitting us? Are we bullshitting them? That sort of thing. And if that works, we make the investment and we go big. And that's what we did with UCHealth.
And so you've deployed AI to run through plain films and look for incidental findings?
Well, now we've done pulmonary incidental findings, pulmonary nodules. We're just starting on pancreatic incidental findings and thyroid incidental findings. And we get on planes and get on calls and introduce them to other places. So if you look at UCHealth, they're at a lot of systems in the United States now, and we're customer number 2 or number 1.
That space is very close to me. Before Clarius, I was CEO of Zebra Medical, an imaging AI company, and we were actually the first company to get a CPT code for leveraging CTs for incidental findings. First for coronary calcification, so doing Agatston equivalent score on chest CTs, and then for vertebral compression fractures, so being able to analyze risk for osteoporosis. So very close to near and dear to my heart. And I think that's a great story. And I love how you laid it out in such a practical way of like, what's the process of engaging and ultimately what is the value that it brings to the system and what value does it bring to the company in that type of symbiotic partnership. Maybe let's talk about a space that I'm in today, which is ultrasound. We talk about innovation. We talk about technologies that kind of can solve real world problems. And yet handheld ultrasound, right, which is kind of this concept of democratizing access to imaging, is still really in its infancy. It hasn't hit a major inflection point of replacing the stethoscope. In EMED, where you are, it's quite prevalent, and it sounds like you use POCUS at your health system. But kind of we haven't been able to convince GPs to put up the stethoscope and pick up an ultrasound. What advice would you have for us of thinking about how to drive breakthroughs without innovation?
So I'd ask you a question. How many GPs have you actually spent days and days with?
So you're saying start with deep understanding of the workflow.
Yeah. You can't bring a solution to a problem when, one, you don't actually know it's a problem and you don't know where the problem sits and who's responsible for solving that problem. So the first thing I would do is meet the CEO, look at your product. I would pretend as though and behave as though I don't know anything about POCUS, right? I do as an emergency physician, but that's not my role here. And then I would bring 3 people who know about POCUS and decide whether your company had legs from a solution perspective. And then we do the technical and the financial deep dive. But if you're looking to primary care, I'd ask primary care, where do you wish you had an ultrasound? And if you did have an ultrasound, what do you wish it could do? So here's what I bet they would say if you would find one to talk to you. They would say, what am I going to do with an ultrasound? Because whenever I believe that there's an anatomic problem, I send it for a formal consultative ultrasound, and then that dictates whether they go to a subspecialist. So am I going to look at a person's gallbladder and decide that's normal, and then say you don't have cholecystitis or cholelithiasis? What are you going to do with this? What do you want me to do with this ultrasound? Can I bill for these ultrasounds that I'm doing? Remember, a primary care physician has 20 minutes to see a patient. Usually they have 12 problems. They get through 8 of them. The physical exam is cursory, usually, unless it's a specific problem. So you want them to have no risk, have it be super easy. So here's what I would say. When you put the ultrasound on the patient, does it tell you you're in the right place? And if it doesn't, does it tell you go up, down, right, left, twist, or not? And then it goes bing when you're in the right place. You know, when you use your cell phone to cash a check, right? If you still get paper checks, your cell phone goes ding, there's a haptic, and it tells you got the right image. That's what I'd want. Then I'd want to look at my phone, and I'd want you to tell me what the image is. This is a normal gallbladder. This is an abnormal gallbladder. I'd want it to automatically upload into the EHR without me doing anything. And that image is now in the EHR. So I can say, Mrs. Smith, I think you have a normal gallbladder, but I'm going to hear from a radiologist in an hour or so, or 2 hours or whatever, that it's normal, and it'll be uploaded into your chart. So are you actually doing that? Because that's what a primary care physician is going to need an ultrasound to do. Is the stethoscope analogy is not interesting from the fact that it's the same size and it's acoustic, right? That doesn't make it analogous to a stethoscope. What's analogous is it's fast. It gives you an answer, and you are facile and familiar with the answer. Where ultrasound struggles is it looks like it's getting easier on how to use it. It's smaller, so it's not some giant machine. Plugs into a phone, so it doesn't need a giant monitor. Tell me about the intelligence. Does it make it easier? Does it make it faster? Does it give you an answer? Is that answer true? Am I allowed to treat it as true? That's what I think a primary care physician would say.
I think it's a great blueprint. And to be frank, that's part of the reason, actually, if we think about our company, through our narrow lens, that's why we've decided not to focus on primary care, because we thought the problem that they need solving isn't one that is as readily accessible through point of care. We focus on specialists for exactly those reasons. They have very concrete problems to solve where imaging can help, and they have very dedicated tools to help visualize whatever they're doing, whether it's putting a needle into a rotator cuff or performing a flow analysis of someone's rheumatoid arthritis, right? So, but I love how you laid that out. I think it's a great blueprint for us, for the rest of the industry, to really think about this concept of getting deep into the workflow, and always a reminder to us as technologists to not get caught up in the solution, but rather to focus on the problem.
Yeah, and also think about your consumer. Does it make their life better and easier? Mm-hmm. And if it makes it more complicated and harder, why? You're never going to convince anybody to adopt your technology, to believe your idea, to embrace your concept if it costs them time, money, and autonomy. That's not a thing. So if I said to you, hey, Ohad, I have this great idea. I'm going to use a bot to do podcasts, so you don't even have to exist. And we're going to take your business away from you, and it's going to be even better. Are you going to be participatory? Not participatory, right? That's essentially where we are. Now look at ultrasound and emergency medicine, right? We know how to use it. So if you give us something that's easier to use, you just made my life easier. I already know how to bill for it, right? So give me something easier compared to what I'm doing now. That's a pretty simple value equation. Now, how much does it cost? Is it 5 times as expensive or half as cheap, right? That's a very different conversation.
That's a wonderful call to action for our listeners. Think about the problem you're solving and think about the user you're solving it for, and not just their clinical need, but their social emotional need. Is they're making them more important, less redundant? Is it making them more valuable? Is it making them happier? And those are great takeaways for us. Richard, we're close to closing our session today. Any parting thoughts for the technology community? You sit again at this very interesting juncture of being a clinician, being a teacher, being an entrepreneur yourself, and leading innovation and ventures for a major health system. What is kind of the one piece of advice you'd like to impart on us, in addition to kind of this great blueprint you've talked to us about problem-based innovation?
Innovation is not about shiny objects. It's not about technology. It's about recognizing a problem and having a better or different way to solve it. It may include technology. It may include an algorithm. It may simply include a new process. So you must understand the problem before you develop a solution.
Well, that's got me excited. That's all we're going to have time to cover today, Richard. I just want to thank you for your great insights. Congratulate you for everything you've done, but it sounds like you're still have many, many places to go and many companies to help carry with you on this journey. Would love to keep in touch, and I'm really grateful for our time together today.
My pleasure. Thanks for having me. Take care.
And for our listeners, thank you for joining us for another episode of our podcast. That's a wrap.